We're back for season 2.
Yes, it's bigger. It's badder. It's...
Oh, just get on with it.
Bad Scripts.
Hello and welcome to Bad Scripts. It's me, Steve Jones, here again for another special. And joining me, the man we all love to talk about, the man who's got the best stories. Please welcome back again, your co-host with the most. It's none other than Mr. Mike Garlia. Hi, Mike.
Oh, Steve, you keep pulling me that pedestal. It's gonna fall down at some point. How you doing, mate?
I'm very good, and you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. I'm really, really good. It's lovely to hear your voice and to get the opportunity to lay down a track and record our voices once again, and indeed have a wonderful brand new guest on the show.
Oh, fantastic. So without further ado, because we've got a lot of questions to get through, let's get in there and speak to our guest.
Well, I am so excited to introduce a really, really good friend of ours, very accomplished TV presenter, host, live events. He's been in probably a lot of things you've seen, including, and one thing I really want to talk about a lot more from a behind the scenes point of view is The Apprentice. A wonderfully accomplished individual who's worked in entertainment for probably over 20 years now and built a really good name for himself. Part of Family Fortunes, or that family of presenters that's done that. It is the wonderful and the effervescent Mr. Paul Metcalfe.
I've never had an introduction. Thank you, guys. I've never had an introduction like that before. I was, as you were doing that, I was thinking, oh, maybe it's not me. Maybe I'm on in a bit.
Who's this guy they speak of? It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to come on and talk to us about your life, your career, and the influence of being a camp coat, as we call them in our little show.
That's right. So we normally bring guests on to talk about our show and make us feel good and give us big heads and stuff like that, and talk about how wonderful it is. But that's not the purpose of this episode. This one is really about showcasing you, Paul, because we met a long time ago in one of these holiday resorts, and you've had such a wonderful career and journey since then, and you put so much hard work into building this amazing career for yourself. And we're just really, really interested to hear more about that. And I think our listeners will be as well, just to hear about how you've done it, what you've done, what your highlights were, what your lowlights were, and the amount of energy you just had to put into this, to have a full-time career in entertainment, because we've all fallen by the wayside, but you're still champing away.
I'd say plugging away is the right term there. But yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And from my times working in the holiday parks and stuff, it was just, that's where I totally felt it was the right place for me. And it was where you learned everything. You know, I feel sad for entertainers and performers now because they're not getting this structure. They're not getting this grounding. They're not going to learn what you know. I've worked with Mike, of course, and what we learned. You know, we were thrown in the deep end. I love that it was called. We had like an academy. And they used to have this in the brochure. I'm very careful what I say, but in the brochure, it was called an academy. And I remember reading this one day and thinking, I never went to no academy. But the people that came to see us, the visitors, our guests, as we called them, they would read that we were at the academy, and you would play along. People would ask you about the academy, and you'd say, "Oh yes, we've all studied to do this," and it was absolute bunkum. Well, the truth was that we all just were at different levels in our lives. Really, people were, there was people there that didn't, everybody. It was that crazy thing when you got the job. You almost was so grateful to get the job, because when you found out how many people didn't get the job, that was the crazy thing. I think you almost took it for granted until you found that out, because you turned up on the day and you did the auditions. And I listened to the podcast, and it's very similar to how you described it in the script. You were there in front of these awful people who were, ex West End people that thought, they were wonderful and everything. And it's great to hear those characters because they exist. And, and I also, it's mad that when you arrived, I think there was like a camera, I'm showing my age, but there was like a sort of video camera on a tripod that was there to sort of video stuff. I mean, nothing like the X Factors and the Britain's Got Talent, behind the scenes stuff that we see today. But they were almost the start of that, really. It was, if we were in the time now, that's what would have happened. I think auditions would have been filmed, and I think it would have been almost a TV show to see every year who became the entertainers at the park. So, but that wasn't there. But I do remember the story of somebody that was auditioning with, and they pretty much didn't. They said they didn't like kids. They were like, "Oh, I hate kids." And then they went in, and they were very good. But what I found out when I got there is that they often, and they still do it today. And I've been to auditions where they still do this. They stage people in with you. They have people in with you who queue up because they want to know what you're really like. They want to know that you know what it's like, Mike, working there. You're not just, it's not like a job where you go on stage and you perform and then you go home again. You live there. You have to be a nice person. You have to get on with everybody. You have to be part of a team. And the girl that said, "I don't really like kids," she pretty much shot herself in the foot because she didn't get the job because the person she told this to was one of the people that we worked with afterwards, Mike. And I was like, "I recognize you." And I remember talking to her about that. She said, "Yeah, it was unbelievable, the things that she's seen going in, pretending to be, an auditionee, if you like, and the things, that people." And it's not like we're always on show, but I suppose when you get there, I'm just me. I'm just kind of do what I want to do, and I enjoy it. And I hope that comes across. And even now, when I moved to London, going to auditions was really different. Like I always remember you go into you go down some stairs, it was always some stairs, and there'd be like clipboards there, and there'd be these people sort of sitting there really sort of miserable looking at you. And you'd sort of go, "What do I do?" And nobody tell you anything because they didn't want you to know. And you'd sort of find the clipboard and get on with what you needed to do, filling out your details. And then somebody else would walk in the room and I would stand up and go, "Oh, hi, yeah, you're right. Make sure you grab a clipboard," And then everybody in the room would then have that panic on their face that I was a stooge, and I used to play that, and so I learned that from my and that would have everybody on edge. So I'd have that little edge over them, and then I'd go in quite confident because I was sort of, it was my little game I used to play. But I was also being nice as well. I just wanted to help other people out. It was nothing worse than walking through the door and not knowing what to do and nobody there to help you. So. Yeah, I suppose I learned that. But there was some negatives to it coming out of that world. I was up for a really big presenter job with some dragons, I think we'll call them. I think they call it Shark Tank over in America, them sort of people. And it was a big event. And I was basically got the job and I was selling myself a bit more, which I often do. And I oversold myself. And I kind of went, "Oh, yeah, I've done this sort of thing before." And I mentioned the whole holiday park thing, and I saw their faces almost change. And the next thing I know, I didn't have the job. And I thought, well, that's really sad because they see what we do is not professional and not at the level that they want. So it was that thing. Do you mention it? Do you not mention it? What do you think, Mike? Did you always mention it or did you not mention it?
No, I don't think I mentioned it for a really long time, actually. It was Steve that got me over that. I kind of hid it, especially when I left entertainment and entered the business world. I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about that stuff. And I remember one time Steve talking to me about that and saying, why would you not want to talk about this life that you had that people would be envious over? And it took me a great while to get over that and say, okay, I can open up and talk about this stuff and talk about this past life that I had. Because, for everyone else, my life started in my 20s. I can honestly say when I went to auditions, I never really got much of a chance to talk about it. I mean, it was on my CV, but it wasn't something that I had many opportunities to do. So it's really interesting that when you mentioned it, it affected the kind of jobs you've got. And one thing we're exploring in the show right now is that the ego that comes across with, being a professional performer, being part of equity and going up through the scale. that's a real big thing, though, isn't it? That's not fake. That really is a thing. And what you're describing is exactly that. I'm keen to understand why you felt you didn't get the job, because you mentioned that one little moment of your life.
But it almost cheapens what I've done since. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be where I am today. I genuinely believe this if I hadn't that training, because you were put in front of people on stage and you were just, entertain these people. And I'll quickly tell you the story. When I mentioned before, I came in, and Mike, you were ahead of me. And you were one of the main dancers in the shows and stuff, and I was more the kind of one of the entertainers there. And so I didn't really get the opportunity to do what you guys were doing, and I was just so jealous of that. I'd watch your shows, and you did like a magic show. I always remember that I was just so wanted to do, and I remember like sneaking backstage.
You're a magician though as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I dabble. I mean, I have done a bit of magic in the past and stuff, and I've done some stuff on TV, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so but I didn't get a chance to, and then a twist of fate, shall we say. I was basically working in the big tent area where the entertainers were, and Bucks Fizz were on. I think we can mention them. They're an 80s pop group.
Yeah.
And because they've probably performed in every holiday park in the land. So we should be okay. Anyway, so they were performing and the sound went off. Everything went off. I don't know if you were around when this happened, Mike. And I just went into automatic pilot and climbed up the ladders into the the box in the head. We almost called it the spaceship, and grabbed a microphone and just took control. And I don't even remember no, and that wasn't my job. That wasn't what I was supposed to do. But everybody was just running around like headless chickens trying to get this sorted, and the audience, wondered what was going on. And it was me who kind of warmed the crowd up, got them all cheering, gave a menu of what was happening in other venues, and basically apologized and said that we're having a few issues and all that. Nothing spectacular, but and then the show started again, and I didn't think anything of it. And then the next morning, I got called into the boss's office. I thought, oh, this is it, I'm out. And he said, and that's when they said, you saved the day. We basically, they were ready to go. They were so annoyed with how it had all been dealt with, and it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have Bucks Fizz. I was like, wow. I don't know if that's a claim to fame. But from that point on, they started giving me amazing opportunities to kind of host all the shows in the venues and the big game shows and stuff like that. And there I was a first year, if you like, in my first year, whereas you didn't usually get those opportunities as an entertainer till about the third year or second year. So I was getting those in the first year. There was a lot of jealousy from a few of the other entertainers, which was quite sad to see, but that happens, and I've learned that.
Wow.
Since.
And just on that point then, because we've had another guest on, Alison, who I don't know if you know Alison, who was also part of that circle, and she's talked about this in the show too. So it's great that you're completely separate. And she was talking about getting cast in her first year and everyone feeling quite jealous. She lost friends and people quit over it all. So it's so interesting that you're also saying the same thing. So is that really a thing? Because I mean, I was already cast, so I never saw any of this. So I was either on stage or in a dressing room. I never really socialized with anyone, as Steve always winds me up about. But from your perspective, is that really a thing from your experiences?
I mean, you really are. It feels like therapy, this, Mike, honestly. I may have to go lie down after this. But I was coming up to the green room door where we all kind of used to wait behind the backstage sort of area where the public couldn't get to. And I heard somebody say, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, well, I don't know how he got the role. He's only, I don't know why they've given him the opportunity. And there was some nasty other things said. And I remember not going into the room, and I remember walking out, and I remember going back to my chalet at the time and, almost crying. I was like, oh my God, they all hate me. And all I want to do is perform and just be like them. And, and almost I looked up to a lot of them, because I thought they were all very talented, the people I was working with. But so jealousy is a nasty thing. But I did speak to a friend of mine, and she gave me the best advice ever, which is, if they're not talking about you, you're doing something wrong. And I thought, I like that.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. I think that's one of those things, isn't it? If somebody's jealous of you, you're obviously doing something right. So, keep on plugging away. And it's great to hear that story, because, it's familiar to me and Mike, because whether you know this or not, because I think it was a little bit after that time, but it was a similar thing me and Mike did with our boy band that we put together, and that, you know, we didn't feel like we were in our first year. We didn't feel like we were necessarily getting the shows. Mike had put a few people together, and then I joined as well, and we asked to go out there. We asked to do our own show, and that got a little bit of a backlash as well from people, because we'd taken the initiative, similar to you did, Paul, and gone out there and done our own thing to get out there, to get front and center, and to try and, you know, do what we've gone there to do, which is to perform and to make people smile and entertain. And it's really sad, Rid, to think that people wouldn't celebrate that with you and want to come along for the journey.
No, I disagree, actually. I disagree that it's sad. I think it's just part and parcel of the nature of what we're doing. Now, you got to think about this. You're taking a bunch of young people, you're putting them all into this institution, which is what it is. And it's, you know, it's rise from the top. You have to stand out from the crowd. You can't go in there thinking that you can hide in the shadow. And if you do hide in the shadow, you just get forgotten about. Just like what you've done, Paul. You climbed that ladder, you took some initiative, you just knew what the right thing to do. You didn't have to do it. No one else did it. But then you got on the microphone and it led to something. It put you on the radar. And isn't that what the entertainment industry is really all about? Like, it's a safe environment to do it, but isn't that what you have to do to get by in that world?
Yeah, I think when you're younger as well, you can get away with a bit more of that. You know, I used to be very cocky. I would go to the BBC TV studios, and I would go up to children's TV, and I'd be like, I want to see, you know, the head of children's, and they would be like, you know, and I used to send showreels in all the time. You know, you had to. And back on the time when we had videotapes, they would arrive. And I used to do a great thing. I used to, and I'm giving all my secrets away, but I used to put it in a padded envelope. And I used to fill it with lollies and sweets. And, so that when my tape banged down on the desk, it was full of sweets and lollies. And it kind of made them go, oh, this guy's pretty cool. Let's invite him in. And that's how I used to get sort of castings. But talking about that is just kind of, it was like, yeah, you could get away with a bit more when you were younger. Now, I would imagine me just walk. I just can't see me doing it now. And I maybe should do a bit more of that.
Maybe send a bag of sweets to someone and
maybe not the bag of
with a picture of yourself.
I think once you get to a certain age, you start sending sweets to people. It goes a different way,
not
doesn't
right,
it? Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. Okay, I'll cross that off the list. But when you know, going into meetings and kind of asking to speak to people and stuff like that, and yeah, and also I think it's very sad that TV isn't made like that anymore. You know, it's very different. It's all social media, and you know, just before I come on today, I was doing tags of a show I'm doing at the moment. You know, hashtags and videos and TikToks and all this kind of crazy stuff that I've almost had to learn and buy into. So it is a different kind of game that we're playing at the moment. But yeah, in some degrees I agree. I think you're right. In the entertainment game, you have to stand out, and I guess that's what I did there. And only you saying that to me now have I thought of it like that. I just thought of it just doing what I do. You know.
I keep saying I don't know why I keep saying but maybe you don't know. Paul, I do remember speaking to you at the time, and I remember having conversations with you in the green room. Now, I don't remember the context of the conversation. I just remember meeting you, and every so often, like, I've got a terrible memory. You always did stick out in my mind, though, as being someone who's very career driven, very ambitious. And then what you really need is someone to mentor you, to funnel that ambition into a particular way. Did you have that? Did you have a mentor, someone who guided you, or someone who inspired you?
Not really, I guess. I mean, it's so difficult because my parents were really supportive of everything I did. You know, they, flashing forward, going forward and back. But when I was, at uni, I would kind of go and work at Television Centre on Blue Peter and Smart and, all these kind of kids shows. And, and my parents would pay for me to go back and forth to London on those trains, and it was expensive and stay in hotels. So I had that amazing support from them to do that. And it got me a great CV. It got me a great grounding in, all the background, working behind the scenes on Blue Peter was just unbelievable. I still can't believe, I had that opportunity, and, looking after the pets and walking them and thinking, if I lost these pets, would I be the most famous person in the world for losing the Blue Peter dog? And then I thought, no, they're probably trained to go back to the studio, so I'm not going to do that.
And by pets, you mean the presenters, right?
Well, yeah, in some ways.
So what era presenters were you working with then? Who was on the show?
The Richard Bacon gave me his badge, and he got sacked a week later. So there you go. I might even have a drug-stained badge. I don't know. I've never
Maybe he got sacked
Amazing.
because he gave you the badge. He was like, "You cannot give away the Blue Beater badge. You are done here. You've
Yeah.
just broken the code."
I mean, the thing was, I was doing like a work placement there where you didn't get paid to do, but you were kind of amazing, learning all this experience. And and you didn't get a badge at the end of the day. And I was like, and they went, "Oh, sorry, we don't give out badges." I was like, "Are you kidding me? This kid,
That's the reason I'm here, yeah?
this kid's sending in a picture covered in pasta, and you're sending a badge to them. And I've done a day's work for no money, and you've not given me a badge." And I think I obviously didn't say any of this, but they could see that I was not happy. And Richard Bacon took me to one side and said, "You can have my badge." And he took his badge off and gave it to me, and I've still got it. I've actually still got the badge, and I'd never sell it. I know that they went for a lot of money on eBay and things like that, and on auction sites, and I just thought, no, that's a piece of kind of history that I've got. But like
is
I
that
said,
show still live? Is that show still running?
Yeah, they do. But they're all influencers. They're all young kids that do it now. I've had auditions for Blue Peter in the past and got very close, and that's hard. You get to the final 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, and you don't get the job, and then you're just like, what's happened there? But coming back to the holiday park times, I sneaked off to do an audition for a children's channel, CITV, and got down to the final 2. And the holiday park company, I don't know if you know this, Mike, I've probably never shared it with many people, but they were convinced that I was going to get the job, because of my background with the holiday park and what the PR was like for that company. So I was then thrust into the posters and doing all the interviews and stuff with the celebrities that came, and we had like the music smash hits kind of came in and did their road shows. I got to host that, and I was just like, this is my dream, it's all happening. And then I didn't get the job in children's TV. And I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't a nice time for me. They almost just like brushed me to one side, and I was back just being a normal entertainer. But nobody, helped me with that. Nobody gave me any sort of, and that as a young kid dealing with that was blooming difficult, because you were like, one minute you were doing interviews and photos, and you'd almost got the job already, and then you didn't get the job, and there was no like, "Oh, well, we'll still let you do a few bits and bobs." It was literally like, let's get the next guy.
Just cut short straight from there. Yeah, because they're not gaining from that. So whole, we got to look after you right now, and that's tragic, Paul. I'm so sorry. And in the second half of this interview, we should really talk about how you pick yourself up again when you don't get these kind of jobs, because we cover auditions and stuff, and it's a hard thing to face. Not only is the nerves of going to an audition and being prepared enough and showcasing yourself and standing out, you then have to deal with the elation of getting it and then trying to prove yourself again, to the dejection of not getting it and then picking yourself up and brushing yourself off and carrying on. Paul, you're probably the most resilient person I know for that, in terms of just how much you've had to knock on doors and fight, because it's not easy, and you're dealing with a lot of noise, and there's always young generations coming up as well. I'm just keen to really understand how you navigate that yourself and keep yourself on the right track. And you are quite accomplished anyway right now, so I'm sure there's lots of young people who want to hear your story to go, how do I do this?
Yeah, I mean, it is the most difficult thing in the world, especially when you've been up for things like Blue Peter, T4. Just unbelievable jobs when I look back, and you didn't get them. They are the big things. So you're like, and if you were nowhere, I always used to think if you were nowhere near, if you weren't very good, then you wouldn't have got anywhere near it. Yeah. So there must be you must be good, but you're not quite there. You're not quite what they're looking for. And I think that's the way you've got to look at it. It's what they're looking for. Once you can get that in your head, it's not personal. Again, I've got an auntie in America, Auntie Sheila. She's got sort of family and stuff that are in the industry, and she told me another great story, which was that I think it was somebody she knew was up for Hamilton or something like that, and he'd done the audition and he was amazing and everybody loved him, and he didn't get it, and it really, really upset him, and so he wrote to them, and and they wrote back, and the reason he didn't get it was he didn't fit the costume. That was it. That was literally it. And you know how it works, Mike. If that costume's been made for that actor, they ain't going to make another costume. So that's the way I look at it now. If I don't get something, I didn't fit the costume. So
wow, that is an amazing outlook to have. I didn't get it because I didn't fit the costume. That is absolutely brilliant.
So, Mike, I believe you may have prepared some quick fire questions for Paul.
Yeah, Paul, I do have some questions prepared for you, as Steve just said. And I'm wondering if you would be candid enough to share some information about your career and your history and your journey. Are you ready for my quick fire?
Let's do this.
This is your bag, really, isn't it? Because you're a game show expert as well, and you've done a lot of presentations on game shows.
I loved game shows. We did one at the park, and they let me host it a few times, and I used to just. And that's when I knew that's what I loved doing more than anything, was hosting game shows. And since then, I've done some amazing. Yeah, I mean, my biggest one was the tour for Family Fortunes, which was, and I almost feel like I'm going full circle because tomorrow I'm working with Vernon Kay. I'm actually doing a show with him in London. We're doing a big kids festival, and he's on stage, and I'm warming up for him and getting the crowd going and stuff. And I think, do I tell him? Do I say, I was. I did Family Fortunes because you were too expensive.
You should tell him.
Do it.
Also, give him my best as well, because I was once on one of Vernon Kay's shows called Boys and Girls. I think a show he would rather forget, but I was once on that.
Why do I not know about this, Mike?
Where did this come from? I think we need to hear more about that.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another episode. Yeah, but I was, so I've also come across Vernon Kay. Lovely bloke, lovely fella. That's amazing, Paul. So, okay, so here are some of your quick fire questions then. First one, best job you've ever had?
So difficult, but I think I'd probably say Family Fortunes. It was done early on in my career, and it's hard because I've been to some amazing places and performed in amazing places, like doing I was in Croatia a few years ago before the pandemic, doing a game show on a beach, and I thought, I'm in Croatia and I'm on a beach doing a game show. This is pretty epic. But Family Fortunes, 4 shows a day, traveling around the country, real people, real families. And Fremantle came down and filmed it, and I've still got it. And I've got more work off that show than anything else I've done, I think. So I'd have to say that.
And I have to ask, did you ever meet Les Dennis or, in fact, Stephen Mulhern, who was also a coach back in the day?
I mean, yeah. I met Steve when I was working at the park, so we became good friends, but not in that capacity. But the interesting thing about Les Dennis was that they basically, I had to learn Family Fortunes in a day. So this is very cool. Again, it's one of those kind of like, wow, did this really happen? But it did. So the car picked me up and took me to Pinewood Studios. And there was a set, my Family Fortune set that was on the road, was built in this. So I'm in this massive studio, and in the middle of it is this tiny little studio, little set that was going to go around with me. But I'm at Pinewood, and I think this is great. And they even hired, paid actors to come in and be the families so we could rehearse. And we had a whole day doing it. And it was all just getting a bit too much. So I just said, can I just go outside and get some fresh air? And they said, yeah, fine. So I went outside and got some fresh air. And a security guard came over and was like, oh, what are you doing out here? And I said, oh, sorry, I'm the host of Family Fortunes. And he just went, oh, sorry, I didn't realize who you were. And I was like, wow, that's like a real superstar moment. And I'll never forget that. But yeah, it was a pretty awesome thing. But the guy that taught me was Les Dennis's producer. And he said I picked it up quicker than Les, so I was quite pleased about that. But they sent me loads of tapes of Les Dennis and everything to watch and stuff. And I never watched any of them because I didn't want to do what they did. I really wanted to bring my own thing to it. And that's what I hope I brought. But yeah, I mean, on the last day, this is awkward because I was in, I think it was Manchester, and somehow it had leaked out that Vernon Kay was hosting it and I was on. And there was a massive crowd. And I was like, oh, God. And I said, this amazing crowd today. And they said, yeah, it is pretty good. And I was like, it's the biggest we've had. It's incredible. And they said, yeah, well, it may have leaked out that Vernon Kay is hosting. And I was just like, oh, God, this is going to be awful. I'm going to go out. They're all just going to just leave. And I went out and said, oh, I'm really sorry, guys. Vernon has asked me to come along and host the show for you today. He can't do it. I really hope you're going to stay and enjoy the fun. And actually, they stayed. And that was nice because they actually stayed and enjoyed the show. And a few people said I was better than him. But I would never say that. I would never say that. But, you know.
Especially not before tomorrow.
You just have. You have just got on the record saying you're better.
Can you please cut that bit out? Otherwise, yeah.
Don't worry. No. This will go out after you've done it, so it's fine.
It's all good. You'll just never work with me again. That's fine.
Okay, diotomy. We love diotomies. Worst job you've ever had?
Worst. Oh God. The one just pops into my head, and this is embarrassing. I was a wizard, like a dressed up wizard, but I wasn't a normal wizard. I was the wizard hat, and I was inside the hat, so my whole body was inside the hat, and the face of the wizard was where my crotch is. Yeah, but it was kind of a see-through hat, so you could see that I was in the hat, and. Yeah, parents were like, you know, the children were coming up to me, and one parent said, give the wizard a little kiss. And I was just like, this is not right. No, on any level, this is very wrong. And yeah, really awkward. So that one really sticks in my...
That wasn't on the beach in Croatia, was it?
In the mankini underneath. That's what made it awkward.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of not remember the really bad ones, I suppose. But yeah, I think that was pretty bad. That was, yeah, a low point.
That's kind of funny because that takes us back to, you know, Mike, when we did the Power Rangers, when we were there with this. Do you remember we used to do the photo shoots for that? So you did, and Paul, you probably had to do these a few times as some of the dressed up characters, and you'd go and stand out there and have photos with the kids and what have you. But the Power Rangers costumes, there wasn't a lot of room in them. So you'd wear your jockstrap, but I remember seeing in the photo shop on the resort a picture of a kid literally leaning their hand on my jockstrap, and I was like, they've obviously taken this photo and they still put it on the shelf to sell.
Yeah, all right, Steve. Yeah, it's not good. You're bragging away there, and it's never been a problem for me. But yeah, keep bragging. Keep bragging.
No, it brought it to mind. I hadn't thought about that in years, and so you know, Paul's story there about you know, inappropriate costumes just sort of.
I
made
suppose
me
talking
remember.
about costumes again, I think you could do a whole one on this. We were the Toyland characters. I think that's the best way to say it without getting sued. And a bee went inside one of the characters' head during a photo shoot. And I remember Mr. Policeman, we'll call him, going absolutely mental, you know, and the kids screaming and waving his arms around. I mean, that was, crazy times. But I just, you know, I think we could talk about it. I just felt like we were passing out. We were literally in these costumes for a legal amount of times. And we'd be doing these hour photo shoots. And I mean, I know now I have done costume work at it, as I'm sure we all have here. Legally, you can only be in it for 20 minutes. And on a hot day, it's less than 20 minutes. We were in those things for hours, you know, and I genuinely believe I've probably died and come back to life in a Mr. Policeman outfit for Toyland. So
see, resilience, Paul. It's all about training for the future.
Yeah, if you could do those hours and hours, then 15 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, does it? But I mean, it's not the worst thing because and it might have been a little bit before your time, Paul, there, but there was other things in one of those heads. Unfortunately,
I know that story.
You know the story, and it happened when we were there. So yeah,
were you there when that happened?
Yeah. We were there when that happened. When someone broke into the Toyland, and it definitely happened.
That was like a story myth thing that went round, and I was almost going to wait till this finished and ask you if that was a true story.
But when you got to go, you got to go. Okay, and,
that's all we need.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
There is not enough Febreze in the world. Let's just say that
it was a group of drunken louts, wasn't it? Yeah, that kind of decided to.
Urban myth now, but we were there.
We saw it happen. And it did genuinely happen.
The story I heard, and we know about this park, and you know they've given me a career, so I can't be too mean about them. But there was ups and downs. I heard that it was just almost cleaned up and the show went on. Is that true, or did they?
I think there was some steam cleaning, but literally that was it. So
it was a nose plug situation. It was just stick this up your nose and
you'll be fine.
The show must go on.
There's not enough baby wipes, is there? Really, it's just one of those. But and that same costume was actually stolen. I went and did a promo tour for them around loads of travel agents around the UK, and we took that costume with us in the boot. We stayed at this hotel, and I think it was down in Newport in Wales, and we got a call from the hotel that our car had been broken into and they'd stolen that character. You know, the window had gone. Mike's coat, which he's discussed previously in the podcast, he's still upset about the coat.
Still haven't had
been...
the insurance money from that coat,
No.
Steve.
But then they found the costume dumped in the multi-story car park. I don't think they realised how much the costume was worth because they're expensive, those skins. But they'd obviously wondered what this big bag was, taken it, opened it, gone, no, never mind, and then thrown it away. So we got it back, and it would have been the same one that that would have been worn at the time when you were there as well. So. It's done. It's seen the rounds. That young boy with the bell on his hat. He's really been through the mill.
It's all right. He's got a policeman as a friend. So where was he? That's all
exactly.
And again, you're going to tell me if this story was true about the car being stolen. Do you remember that? The boy with the bell on his hat's car used to be locked in a garage at night.
Yes, that did happen too. Yeah.
Somebody rode that around a little bit. Yeah.
Wow, this is like a revelation for me tonight. Thank you, guys.
It's right. You're reminding us of all the set pieces we're going to write into the next season of the shows, Paul. So thank you.
Just keep making your notes, Mike. It's fine. It's all good.
So, Paul, next question for you. Best celebrity you've ever worked with?
Oh God, you should have let me prepare these. This is me. I think I've got it. I did a bit of acting when I left the parks as well, and I went into a show called Coronation Street. You've probably never heard of it. It's not
no idea.
And exactly. And I was doing a bit of sort of backgroundy work, and then I was asked back then, and this never happens now, so I was very lucky. If I would be a small part, if there's a part coming up for a nurse, and if I would play this part, and I just thought, yeah, this is a dream. But the story goes, I mean, that was amazing. But one day I was sitting, Sunday morning, I was in the green room waiting to go up to the hospital to do some filming because they used the outpatients hospital on a weekend because there was nobody there and that's when they could do all the filming. So it's quite nice. I could still do my studies at uni and be able to do this on a weekend. Anyway, Liz Dawn, who played Vera Duckworth, came into the room and said, "What are you doing in here?" And I sort of said, "Oh, I've got to wait in here." And she went, "Oh, no, come with me. You come next door." And she took me into the room, and they were all there. Do you know what I mean? And I'm a massive Coronation Street fan. I'm of the classics, and to think that I, was breathing the same air as these people was pretty darn special. And I mean, I've worked with, look at me name dropping. I've worked with Hollywood actors as well, but nothing does it for me other than that. I just think that.
So you've worked with Hollywood actors, but Vera Duckworth.
Yeah, and I know it sounds silly, but I just think she was such an iconic character in her time. And yeah. Matt Damon, but he said hello to me. That was it. That was it.
The legendary Matt Damon said, "All right, please tell us a little bit more about that." How did
I was in the Bourne Ultimatum, blinking you'll miss me, and we were filming in Waterloo. I mean, I don't know how they got away with this.
I know that scene. I did know that scene, yeah.
They announced, this is a true story, they said, "We are now going to fire a gun in the train station. Please do not alarm. It's for filming purposes." And we were like, how could they get away with that? Bang, the gun went off and everybody started running. And it was a big assassination scene thing. And we were all kind of, there was hundreds of us there, early hours of the morning filming this. And we filmed on the underground when it was closed. So that was the early hours of the morning. And they didn't really know what to do with us. And he just said, "Oh, can you go wait on that platform over there, Paul?" And I went, "Okay." And I stood there. And Matt Damon came walking onto my platform. And he's not the Queen, I can't talk to him. It wasn't ma'am before, not ma'am and jam and all that business. So I just, started chatting to him. And he was really nice. Yeah, he was really cool. I was asking if he was enjoying being in London and how's it all going? Basic chat, but he was really nice. But it wasn't iconic. Do you know what I mean? That was for me. It was like those characters that I mentioned aren't around anymore, and they were in their time. They were very famous actors. So,
massive, they were absolutely massive. Now I'm enthralled about Matt Damon, to be honest with you, because that guy is a legend. He really is. And I know the scene. That scene has is it Paddy Considine in that scene as well? That's where he's chasing him around, isn't he? In that film. Yeah. Good. So we pinpoint the scene.
And another quick story about that was they filmed it previously, and it was Remembrance Day. And here in the UK, at Remembrance Day, we all wear a poppy. And when they cut it together, there was no poppies, and then they cut and everybody was wearing a poppy. So they had to reshoot the whole thing. So the whole filming day had to be redone. But luckily for me, that was the day that I was there. So So yeah, but that was another story. But
incredible.
he used to jump in the air to get his energy because he'd always be constantly running in that film, but obviously he wasn't. So he would like jump and jump and jump, really get, and then they'd go action, and then he'd run. And the other thing was, giving you all the secrets now, there was a table with smoothies on it, like loads of different smoothies. And before every shot, he was just like necking a smoothie, and then he liked to give him that real kind of crazy energy. So yeah.
That's because he's a puppet. That's why he jumps up and down. Someone's pulling the strings. That's a terrible.
It is
joke.
terrible, Mike. But going back to the whole the Coronation Street thing, and I can see where you come from. Mike's a big Hollywoodite, and he's not into British television.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
But for me, when you've grown up watching these characters so beloved by the whole nation, and when you're in a room with them, it's so bizarre, isn't it? And strange and slightly removed from reality. It feels like you know these people, even though you don't know them at all, if that makes sense.
And I guess that's what it was, yeah, because I mean, I grew up watching it with my gran, who's, no longer with us, but was a great supporter in everything I did. So, when you mentioned about a person that look up to, I'd probably say maybe her from the earlier question. But yeah, so watching it with her, and there I was in that room with these people, yeah, and I just thought that you knew them. Yeah, you're right, Steve. That's what it was.
And just a little note, if you do that as Mike did when we did some filming on Brookside and Hollyoaks, we did a couple of days over there, didn't we? And Mike started to talk to was it Billy Corkill or one of the Corkills?
Jimmy Corkill.
Jimmy Corkill. That's right.
He was walking up to us, and I recognised him because I thought I knew him. But when you're in that moment where the penny's not quite dropping of who this person is, and then it clicks of who he is, and I'm like, oh, it's Jimmy Corkill. That's kind of what happened. But Steve, obviously.
But what happened was you stopped in the corridor as if you were going to talk to him. So he stopped too. You realised, oh, I just know him from the telly, and walked off. So I'm stood there with him as if you were going to have a conversation with him. And I went, I'm sorry about him. And then just toppled off behind you. And the guy was stood there going, I don't understand what just happened. It was, a very bizarre.
I think I panicked a little bit. It was only afterwards I realised and put it all together in my head. I'm genuinely not that arrogant. So, Paul, on that note then, worst celebrity you ever worked with? And you don't have to give names if you're not comfortable doing so, but worst celebrity experience you've ever had?
Yeah, I mean, there was I wouldn't even say she's a celebrity, but she does stuff for radio and stuff like that. And I was put on with a co-host, and she was just horrible to me, just absolutely vile to me. She was didn't want to be there. And she asked me to be removed from the job. I was doing a big job for a gaming company. I won't mention who it was, but it was a big show at a big arena show where people go and see all the little latest video games and stuff. So it's a big gig for me. And so I was, really wanted to, and I'm not really a gaming person, really. So I learned everything I could about the games and stuff. So I knew everything I was talking about when I was on stage, so I wouldn't get caught out. And she was just horrible to me. And she'd asked to have me removed. And what was nice is they just said, no, he's really good. You're going to have to work with him. If you can't work with him, you're not professional. But there was times on stage where she tried to outdo me. But Mike, we learned this at holiday parks. And I think maybe, again, we go back to the bullying situation. You learn how to deal with these people. And if you learn to deal with them, the audience could tell that she wasn't a nice person by the way she was kind of behaving with me. So that was pretty awful. And but I got through it, and I remember getting through it and then at the end staying around, and these were kids, but you were signing autographs and having photos with them and stuff. You're not a celebrity, but the kids love it. Whereas she didn't do any of that. She wouldn't do any of that. She was off. So I was just like a horrible person. And recently I saw that she's doing some stuff for like radio and gaming and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, but there you go. But no, I wouldn't mention a name because I wouldn't do that. But the other one is mega famous and used to do Saturday, sort of daytime, good morning TV. Very careful what I say. She's not on at the moment, and I got booked to do a fashion show with her, and I was just like, oh my God, I grew up with this woman. And
is she a brummie? Is she a brummie?
I'm not going to.
Mike, stop digging for scoops.
We're not playing Guess Who here,
Did she have a beard?
And and she didn't want to be there. And we were doing this fashion show together. And I would say, oh, is this the sort of thing you would wear? Blah, blah. And she would go, yeah. She literally gave me nothing. And that was a really tough kind of day. And then afterwards, she handed out printed autographs of herself. And there was lots of people there. And she wouldn't sign any autographs. And a kid came up with a bandaged leg and she wouldn't sign it. And I thought, you're just not a very nice person. So, and yeah. And I know when she's done, I'm really giving clues away here, but when she's done big shows in the West End, her posters have been altered to make her look better, and I know that for a fact. So yeah, but I'm not going to say any more about that.
All part of showbiz, darling. It's all part of showbiz, isn't it? Okay, you've been very candid with us, so thank you so much on those terrible questions. My question for you now is on the future. Where are you going, and what's your aspiration?
Do you know what? I've really enjoyed doing TV in the past. It was amazing, but I just think TV's going away I don't like, and I just don't know where I fit in TV. So I'm really enjoy doing the live stuff. I'm really enjoy getting flown all over the world. That's fun. And just doing different projects. Like tomorrow I'm doing a big games launch with, lots of cool people and giving away holidays and prizes and things like that, which I'm really looking forward to doing. Basically engaging a crowd is a real skill. And I think a lot of presenters on TV can't do that. So I seem to be really good at that. So I'll just keep doing that really. But I mean, never say never. I'd love to get back into do a bit more TV and stuff. But yeah, the live stuff's kind of the way things are going. I think I'd like to do more voiceover stuff because I've done a bit and I really enjoyed that. And I've done, like recently I did a big games conference and I was just sort of the voice of God, and they've now want to fly me abroad to do their next conference as their voice. So I'm like, okay, if they want to fly me abroad, I must be pretty good at doing these voices. So maybe that's something I need to look into. But yeah, and I know you say I'm like one of these people that kind of, every day, but I'm not every day, on it, sending, and I should be, but I'm not. I just kind of, I do plod along a little bit, but I think, I do have to get, the contacts and networking and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, but I think when the pandemic hit, like all of us, I thought it was game over. I was just like, yeah. And then now here we are at the other side of this where things are getting back to normal. And
Paul, how did you support yourself through the pandemic then?
It was I mean, I had a lot of depression. It was I set up a podcast with a lady who was a psychotherapist actually, and we did a thing called Speak Your Mind, and we actually stopped somebody taking their life during the podcast. I'm very, very proud of that. I'm really proud that we were able to have people talking about depression and suicide and subjects that people didn't want to talk about through, in a sort of Zoom situation. So, and again, I did enjoy kind of helping people in that way. So that's something I definitely want to try and pursue again a bit more in the future. But yeah, and then I did sort of cocktail tasting, a gin tasting events where people would get sent their gin and I would kind of do like pop up, and that was nice because you were there at their hen nights or their their kind of birthday parties and stuff, and you were part of that. But it just felt so, this is just not right, and I'm glad that I don't do any of that now. I'm really glad we're back out doing the live stuff because it's not the same. People say, oh, it was great, but nah, Mike, Steve, as soon as you go in front of that audience, it's the best feeling in the world. And talking to a camera is very different.
When you get lost in the experience and that you're onto a good show, that there's no other feeling like it.
But as a little kid can come up to you probably when you were a dancer or whatever and just kind of look up at you and say, like in awe of what you've just done, or say thank you, or and we got a lot of that out back at the holiday parks, and yeah, I think that's special. That's I don't know how many cards and letters that you got while you were there. I've still got all mine, and I'm proud to say that.
I don't have any. I don't have any.
What upsets me is that
the people. Amazing.
Yeah, I've got letters and cards from people, and they have their own children now. And that makes me feel so ancient. I mean, I remember some of them going to university, and they were still sending me letters and things. And you're thinking, wow, you felt like you had an influence on these people, and that you touched them in the right way. You created sort of I knew where Mike was going with that, so I just had to get in there quickly. But you felt like you'd had a positive influence on them because they'd still kept in contact after all this time. And to your point, Paul, about the live stuff, I was going to say before you made the point that there's nothing quite like an audience. Doing stuff in the studio is great, but having people there and seeing those faces and the reaction and the energy that gives you, I don't think there's anything that can compare with it in the world. And Mike, I don't know how you feel about this, but when you present anything now in a work environment, you get that almost a little taste of that again, and you think, wow, I've forgotten how much I enjoy that. So it must have been really nice for you, Paul, when you got back out on the road again after all that time, to be able to get those audience reactions. It must have been a real high for you.
I cried. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was asked to go to Brighton. It was a project where kids were collecting plastic, and I had a big weighing machine, and the kids put the plastic on the weighing machine, and I was in a shopping centre, and there was an audience again, and it was just fun. And I remember going back to the green room. I don't think it was called that, but the room, shall we call it? And just kind of getting quite emotional, thinking, God, it's back. I'm back working again. I'm back doing stuff I love doing.
See, resilience again, Paul, showing absolute resilience there. So, well done you. We're so pleased to hear that you're back on the up and getting work again, because it was quite a harrowing time. Right through the pandemic, and we know that because we saw how publicized the theatre industry was, and what do all these people do now that there's no work for them, and there's no work anywhere. It was a pretty horrible time, and I think it'll take us a while to get over that. But there's one thing I want to ask you, and in the last few minutes, closing minutes of the show, and you weren't allowed to talk about it at the time. You had to sign NDAs, but you were on The Apprentice. Any inside gossip you got from watching those candidates play? Because I remember seeing you and going, oh my God, that's my friend Paul, he's there. And I remember watching that and going, Jesus, there he is.
It was a complete fluke. Right place, right time. I had an agent at the time who said there's a BBC, always call it a BBC documentary, because they're not allowed to call it The Apprentice, and you go along and they had to cast like an advert. So we went along the first day and we all had to go, but we were already told that we were in the advert. So that bit was a little bit, but genuinely they all worked with us, and they had the worst ideas in the world. And we said to the producers, like, can we help them? This is terrible. And they were like, no,
so,
under no
circumstances.
Real?
Was that real? Did they really have bad ideas? Or is it,
yeah.
Was it real? Right,
yeah,
okay, wow.
Just awful. I mean, mine is, it's still on the player. If you're in the UK, I do believe it's on there. They had to promote the light up gilet, which was like a light up kind of thing for, and they decided to do like this scene in Waterloo, the biggest train station in London, and just kind of like act out that we were cars and that we were going to get run over. It was terrible. And you were like going, oh my God, this is my opportunity to be on primetime BBC. And I'm going to be humiliated, and it's not going to happen. I'm not going to let it happen. But what happened was they picked me out to be the presenter. So I was, oh my God, I was thinking off the back of this, I could, maybe get something if I can prove myself. And it was quite mean, because when they actually broadcast it, they said it was a mime, and they literally cut my mic and they didn't have me. So I'm standing in the train station doing all this kind of massive performance of what they're selling, and they made it look like we were miming it. So that was a bit mean and a bit cruel.
Wow.
But it was just cool to be there. But they have a file. They're all given a file, and everything in that file they're allowed to use. Because everybody was like, why don't they just go on, one of the search engines or ring their friends and stuff? It's basically a rule book file, everything that's in this file. And at any time they can stop the task and they can go to the file and look at the file and go, oh, right, we can do that sort of thing. So that was allowed. But we filmed all day, and only for a few minutes on screen, as usual, it usually is. But there was very much a sense of urgency when you watched the show, but there was no urgency when we were filming it. We were just hanging around all day, a lot of time doing it. And people just thought it was a BBC documentary until Claude turned up. And when Claude turned up, everybody knew that it was...
So when Claude turns up to do the writing and you see the cutaway shots of him writing and looking at them, that is literally staged. It's not like he's watching them Wow.
Yeah, he's there, and then he was there signing autographs for people and photos, and then everybody sort of knew it was and he's lovely, he's really nice, and they knew it was they know it's the Apprentice then sort of thing, because obviously it isn't on telly when we're filming it. So, but I did get to speak to some of the candidates, and I sort of said, how come it's you're so tight, and they said, well, because it's constant. They said, you literally will finish this. We'll go into the boardroom tonight. We could be there till midnight filming the boardroom. And I was like, wow. And then, and then they go to bed, and then the next they could be up at 2 a.m. So they almost want them so tired that they are going to make mistakes. And I think that's a lot of the time where you see people quit on it because they're just exhausted. They're just not used to it, and
that's really insightful. So the way the show's portrayed, tomorrow you're in the boardroom, but that's not. It's all in the same kind of period, and the briefing Alan Sugar at the same time, and wow,
there's a lot going on. I mean, it was great to be part of, and it was, as I say, it was really nice to experience it and do it. And I can kind of say I was on The Apprentice. I'm not lying; it's there.
You were there. I remember seeing your updates, and
people think I'm one of the candidates, but I don't correct them on that. I go, yeah, it's on The Apprentice. That's it.
I loved your little teaser notes that you put out going, I can't talk about it, but I'm on something big. And you're like, oh, what is that? And then seeing you in it. But wow, what insight into that show. I am not.
I couldn't tell anyone, Mike. And I'm not good at keeping secrets, things like that. It's like, but since then I've signed a few NDAs over my time. I'm sure you have as well. And they're serious. If you mess that up, you can get into a lot of trouble. So that helps. Knowing that you go on social media and go, hey, I'm doing The Apprentice, then you could end up in court. So
brilliant. So Paul, have you got any particular story you would like to share with us from your time at these holiday resorts?
I mean, a one that really springs to mind, which is the entertainers had to find families to do a family game show in the main sort of tent bit in the middle, and in order to get them ready for that, they would have to bring them backstage. I think that was the only time they ever, and I think after this they stopped doing it, and you'll find out why. But it was the only time they ever brought people into that area. That was our private area. Nobody ever got there. It wasn't a particularly nice area either, so we didn't really want the public to spot. It spoils the illusion, doesn't it? Coming backstage. And it certainly did for these kids, because they got left in the wardrobe. So basically, the two kids just got the mom and dad must have been off doing something, I don't know, looking at costumes or whatever. And the kids just got put into the wardrobe and said, oh, just wait here a few minutes, kids. We'll be back in a minute. I mean, I don't think you're supposed to do that anyway. I really think you should have been with the kids at all times. Anyway, I went to get the kids for the show, and they were just like looking up in complete horror. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with these kids? I'm really quite concerned. They look really shaken. And I opened the door, and then to my horror, this is the room where we kept all the heads of all the characters. So you had Toy with Belle on. You had we had a brand that was all about these teddy bears that used to be like sort of like sweets, and they were there as well. I'm very careful what I'm saying, although we'll end up in a court of law. And all the heads were just there, just looking. And these heads are quite, spooky anyway, without a body on there. And they were just on the shelf, and the kids were just staring up at these heads in complete, absolute horror. And and we had to sort of get them out of the room and calm them down and get them on stage. But I think we used different kids in the end, because I think they weren't off
traumatized.
Can you imagine them going back to their friends when they go back? They had a trophy room and they'd killed all the characters and just hung them on the wall.
I think some realization of going, wait a minute, you're saying these aren't real. That's quite a hard thing to face into.
And usually Mike would have been walking around in his underwear, which again, kids don't need to see that. So backstage. So Paul, a fantastic story. Thank you so much for that one.
Well, look, Paul, thank you so much. Steve, is there anything else you want to ask Paul before we close down the episode?
Nothing to ask. Just a massive thank you for joining us, for such amazing insight, wonderful stories. And you know what? I want to give you a few moments just to tell everybody about your social media handles and anything that you're working on in the coming months that you'd like to shout out about today.
Yeah, no, cool. I'm just kind of doing loads of stuff online. So yeah, I'm at Puzzle Paul, of course, has been my sort of nickname from when I used to do the quiz shows and game shows, and I just sort of kept that as my handle. So most things you can find me on Twitter, Puzzle Paul, on Instagram, Puzzle Paul, TikTok, Puzzle Paul, all those things you'll find me, and just putting out loads of content and just doing festivals and lots of live events and things. Yeah, so yeah, watch this space. Who knows?
So there you go. Any of our corporate listeners listening and you want the voice of God or indeed someone to host your conferences, please, Puzzle Paul is the handle. Please get in touch with him. He's very accomplished, very professional, and just a rather lovely human being.
Oh, bless you guys. Thank you.
Well, Mike, what a fantastic guest to have on the show.
How amazing. How brilliant. How brilliant.
I've really enjoyed myself, but it's come to that time of the day where we have to say goodnight to everybody. But before we go, it would be amiss not to ask for Mike's final words. What are your reflections on tonight's episode, Mike?
Oh, there is so much to unpick there. There is so much because Paul was so giving and gave us so much information there. But what I will end on this is when life gives you Vernon Kay, you will always have Matt Damon.
And on that note, I've got nothing else to add. Thanks for joining us on Bad Scripts, and we'll see you next time. Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlia and Steve Jones, a Beach Tide production.